New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, Mind, Body, Spirit University, a leader in fully accredited in-person and online U.S. college degree programs in the topics we cover here. Visit their website at cihs.edu.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Emmy Vadnais, co-host with Jeffrey Mishlove. Our topic today is Divine Feminine Power with my guest, Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso, who holds a doctorate in humanities and a master's degree in philosophy and religion. She has taught courses on the sacred feminine and women's spiritual leadership at various universities in the San Francisco Bay Area and the UK. She is the founder of the Seven Sisters Mystery School and a teacher of sacred knowledge and the history of virgin birth. She mentors people on their healing and spiritual paths. She is author of several books, including The Secret Life of Mother Mary, Divine Feminine Power for Personal Healing and Planetary Awakening, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the Lineage of Virgin Births, Virgin Mother Goddesses of Antiquity, and The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece. If you enjoy this program, please like, subscribe, press the bell icon, and share. Marguerite lives in Western Massachusetts. Now I'll switch over to the internet video. Welcome, Marguerite. It is a great joy to have you with me on New Thinking Aloud today.
Thank you so much, Emmy. It's great to be here.
I am so excited to talk with you today about the divine feminine and the power of the divine feminine. And we're going to get into a sacred spiritual teacher who I know you're very close with in just a moment. But I'm wondering if we could start out, if you could share with us, what is divine feminine power? Because it's a subtitle of your latest book.
Well, it has to do with the power of the feminine aspect of God, if you will. Something that, as you may know, has been ignored, disappeared, denigrated, at least in the West, for over 2,000 years, if not more, but is really at the underpinning of Western spirituality, as well as spiritualities all over the world when you really look at it. So the power of this sacred feminine being or beingness is very much reflected in the power of women themselves and all people. And we derive energy from this connectivity. And when that is severed, we lose a lot of energy and things start going awry in our world. And that the results of that are what we can see today.
How would you describe the divine feminine versus the divine masculine? And for those listening, whether you identify as female or male, I think you're going to glean something from this conversation. So please do keep joining us here.
The divine feminine has a certain energy that we might call yin, in the great yin yang of it all. And there have been various characteristics ascribed to her that have to do with receptivity, nurturance, that kind of thing, but also fierceness. There is a real fierce, like the mother bear kind of energy to the divine feminine. And the divine masculine is sometimes seen as very action oriented, very, connected to masculine types of power or that kind of thing. So, but, in some people's minds and if you bore down into some religions, like in the Hindu tradition, the divine is really a both and kind of thing. It really is that yin yang. But then the whole circle of it, you might say, is the feminine that encompasses the masculine feminine. So it's just kind of interesting to think about these things philosophically, and then how they manifest in various religions that we're familiar with and some that we don't know about at all.
How can we embrace more of our divine feminine power? And what do you see kind of culturally around that happening?
You know, I've been involved in this movement for a few decades now. And I really got excited about this in my 30s when I started learning that there was such a thing as the sacred feminine or the goddess, and that not only are there peoples around the world who still work with her, venerate her, ask, get healings from her and so forth. But in the Western tradition, as I said, under everything and before the advent of Christianity, we were all connected to a great goddess. This is in the history. This is in the archaeology. This is in the legends and so forth. So, learning about that was a key important thing for me, because it was a very important way that I was connecting with my own power and expressing that in the world. So I did lots of goddess pilgrimages to sacred sites where the feminine had been venerated or still is. I did lots of reading. I started going to grad school to study and write about this. I became, kind of a second wave writer of these types of things, which leads us to the book that I know we're going to talk about today, which is my book on Mother Mary, because part of this reclamation has been discovering that even in the Western tradition, the Christian tradition, if you will, Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary and other sacred feminine figures and beings have been there all along. And peeling off the veils and the layers to understand that can be very, very invigorating and empowering, especially for women, but for everybody.
I know for myself personally, being raised Catholic, that there was very little mention of Mother Mary. Mary Magdalene was something that I think I learned about through Jesus Christ Superstar. And it seemed very tilted toward the masculine or men, which seemed like something for me as a young girl I just was missing, and it was hard for me to identify fully with the religion from that perspective.
And this is the experience of myself and so many people for, at least 1,500 years since Mary started getting suppressed and went underground, as well as Mary Magdalene. But it hasn't always been like that. And to uncover who these particular two Marys, as well as other Marys and other sacred women who were around the Holy Family, were all about, is very exciting. It's very exhilarating. It's what I do in the secret life of Mother Mary. And a lot of people, I cannot believe the response to this book, Emmy, because people are like just weeping with gratitude and recognition. And this is people who've been following like the unveiling of Mary Magdalene over the past 40 years, as well as people who are just new to this exploration of the true feminine within the Christian tradition.
Before we get into your deep dive into the secret life of Mother Mary, can you share, because I know you are a religious scholar, a little bit about the representation of the divine feminine across different cultures, the world? How do we see that represented?
In her original, indigenous form, the sacred mother, the sacred feminine is a wonder, right? She can be mother, she can be sister, she can be daughter, she can be caretaker, she can be intelligent, wise woman, she can be divine conceiver, she can be healer, right? All these kinds of things. She can be nurturer, cultural holder, the source of, all sorts of energies for the people. She's often connected with the natural world as well. So, I've studied goddesses in the African continent, the Asian continent, all the continents of the world. And it is amazing to bore down and find the similarities in the sacred feminine among different traditions in different continents as well as the countries within those continents. It's fascinating. It's breathtaking. It's joyful to see how they're represented in art, how in some cultures the people are still venerating with them, having them in their sacred rituals and so forth.
Well, our focus with this conversation primarily is around Mother Mary, because that's where you've taken the deepest dive, and I know you have a strong personal connection, and you even have had a couple miraculous healings with her. Could you share a little bit about how did we lose this connection and this thread through history of Mary and the feminine in the Christian path?
When what we're now calling Christianity was first on the scene, it was really more a kind of an indigenous, what we might call Gnosticism. I mean, this was a movement of great awakening and healing that was emerging from the people in the Jewish tradition, but also it was more of an eclectic tradition that it had to do with, ancient Egypt and ancient Greece. All these threads were feeding into the rise of this sacred family at this time on earth in the Holy Roman Empire that reached very far. So when you look at the material in the very early years, decades, and first few centuries, you see that the women were equals with the men. In fact, there are more images of them than men in both the churches and so forth, the very early churches, manuscripts, and, all that kind of documentation. It's only like around the 3rd or 4th century of the Common Era when they have these councils, like of Nicaea and that type of thing, which are all run by men who have now taken over the entire organization of this burgeoning spiritual movement. And they cut out, all of this material having to do with the feminine, with Mother Mary, with Mary Magdalene, with other female figures. That's around the time, like around 300-400 of the Common Era, where this patriarchal kind of religion that becomes Christianity really digs in. And from there, forget it. Mary Magdalene is made into a prostitute. Mother Mary has disappeared. She makes a brief appearance in the Christian Bible as the one who conceived Jesus miraculously. There's no other description of where she came from. You have to go to outside gospels that are outside the accepted canon to find that out. And you see little snippets here and there of Mary Magdalene's role with Jesus and the women around Jesus and all that. But for the most part, the men take over. They become the preachers. The churches are named in alignment with, the original male apostles and so forth. And then they're off to the races with a totally patriarchal religion.
Let's go ahead and explore, who is Mother Mary?
She's a very great human being who, because of her spiritual devotion, and I believe, and I am working off a Hindu saint, a late Hindu saint named Sri Kaleshwar, who I believe had many lives on the earth plane. Her Mother Mary walk was not her first walk, because she had developed her soul to such a degree. She was able, in the lifetime that we know her as Mother Mary, to come in. She was divinely born, first of all, by her mother. There was no intimate relating with her mother, Anne, originally named Hannah. And Anne brought in Mother Mary so that Mother Mary is already what you would call a divine avatar through that divine birth practice. And then Mother Mary is trained in a special way by the virgins of the temple to become a divine birth priestess herself. And she is able to, at a very young age, between 12 and 16 years old, conceive and give birth to Yeshua, Jesus. And then she is able to raise him, teach him, resurrect him through her yogic powers, through her womb powers. And then after he kind of leaves the earth plane, she then goes on to be essentially the first leader of the church that then becomes named the Christian Church. And I talk in the Secret Life of Mother Mary all about how she did all of those things. What is the evidence of that? How is she described? And what does doing this unveiling job reveal about her? And why is this so important and exciting to us now?
You mentioned one book that you reference quite a bit in your book. Can you share a little bit about that gives a little bit of this evidence, or a lot of this evidence that you're talking about?
Yes. So there are several, but the main one that tells us about how Mother Mary was born and raised and gave divine birth to Jesus, it's called by scholars lately the Infancy Gospel of James, but its original title was Birth of Mary. And that gospel, the analysis of that gospel and the exciting revelation of what it means in that gospel is the substance of my previous book called The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the Lineage of Virgin Births. So if people want to see all the details about that, how and why it is that I know so much and am able to decode that gospel, essentially, you can read that. Then The Secret Life of Mother Mary has like a shortened version of that in one of the early chapters, but then it goes on to reveal much, much more about who Mother Mary, the woman, the priestess, the healer, the exorcist, and the leader is.
Right. And you describe her as a high priestess.
Yes. Yes, because she is doing all of the things that the traditional patriarchal priests were doing at the time and more. She's using incense and myrrh to help get the congregation, into an open state of consciousness for prayer and connectivity with the divine realms. She's using methods that where she knows how to bring the dead back to life. She's using her healing abilities. She is a serious teacher about the mysteries of love and, how people can get along, peace, heal our inner souls, that kind of thing, right? And many, many other things like that.
Can you shed a little bit more light on the divine birth? And because I think most people who have some understanding of Christianity or been raised in that faith have been taught about this birth. You wrote so well in your book about how many of us were told that Mary was just sort of this passive receptacle for Jesus, but yet you've discovered that there was a lot more going on there.
That's right. She was the active agent that was the leader of this movement to bring an avatar in, whom we call Jesus, and to have him bring this great mission of healing and love and peace to the planet. And what I discuss, Emmy, is that she, in both of these books, she is a lineage holder of this capacity of divine birth. As I explained, her mother Anne knew how to do it. It was a very high-level priestess yoga. It wasn't just something that accidentally happened to people walking on the street, or happened to people if they were really, really good and praying hard, which is the story that we get about her mother Anne. And then the story we get about centuries and generations earlier, Sarah, the mother of the biblical Isaac, right? Sarah, the partner of Abraham, right? And so in Mother Mary's family, her mother Anne was able to do this. And Elizabeth, her relative Elizabeth, was able to do this. And there's evidence that Elizabeth might have been Anne's sister and therefore might have been Mother Mary's aunt. Elizabeth was the mother of John the Baptist, you see, and she gave birth to him in that way, divinely conceiving him. So Jesus and John the Baptist were these two holy avatars, because when a child is brought to the earth in this way, he has special abilities, special powers, if you will, to help the people. And so John and Jesus went around, trying to awaken masses of people to the reality of other planes of existence, to their own healing capacities, and more. All right. To their ability to have their own, ascension, if you will, after their deaths, and really connect with divine light within. Right. So Mary was the spearhead of this whole enterprise, really. And when we understand and look at the evidence for what she was doing, it's a completely new picture of this woman, this priestess, this sacred being who was very, very advanced. And there's so much medicine in there for what is possible for us. This is not about a poster child that we're just hanging up like, oh, isn't that nice? She's so great. Let's pray to her. It's, wow, get me some of that. This is the point of the book. And that's what a lot of people have been doing with Mary Magdalene over the past 40 years. As the veils have been lifted, oh, she wasn't a prostitute. She was a high holy, the smartest one of all of the apostles. She may have even been Jesus' marriage partner, what were her powers, right? So the same thing now is happening with this new look at Mother Mary. And it's very, very important for us, whether you were brought up Catholic, Christian, or not. This is medicine for anyone who's interested in the sacred feminine and how looking at these role models and still consulting them, because they operate on the other side in my belief structure and that of many people, to assist us with this awakening. We've got to move this along now. There's too much that's going on the earth plane. We've got to strum the strings and get these powers in ourselves going.
You've mentioned the word yoga a couple times, and I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about how you've come to accept that Mary was working with yogic powers, and you've also mentioned in your book how she really was the one who taught Jesus
Yes.
a lot of his gifts and abilities.
Yes. And, with yoga, we're not talking about sun salutation. You know what I mean? Things on the floor where we're stretching. We're talking about energetic processes that are based in the use of mantras, which are sound vibrations, that are tried and true methods that Hindu saints have used for millennia, and that Mary was apparently using, as was Jesus, as was Mary Magdalene. All of this information is according to the late Hindu saint Sri Kaleshwar, who I think I mentioned earlier. And I talk about his teachings in this regard extensively in The Secret Life of Mother Mary, because this, for me, when I learned about this firsthand from one of his senior teachers, was pivotal. The day that I was learning the Holy Womb chakra system that Sri Kaleshwar has pulled through from these ancient manuscripts written on palm leaves. And this man, who passed from his body in 2012 and was only 36 years old, claims to have had past life memories of being with the sacred family, as well as his own deep knowledge and miracle abilities and his pulling forth of this information. When I learned that he has been sharing with the world what a powerhouse Mother Mary was, I was weeping in this class, because he's the one who said, yes, Mother Mary, first of all, worked together with Mother Divine, the Great Mother, to bring in Jesus, planning that. She used those yogas, those mantras and practices, and a meditation practice, and all of these energetic abilities that she had learned over years and lifetimes to conceive him, to bring him forth and teach him in the womb. Kaleshwar says he transmitted this information to Jesus. She transmitted this while he was in the womb. Okay. Then she was able to bring him forth through these mantric practices. And while he was alive, they were soulmates. Okay? They were not in the sense of like romantic partners, but they were supporters to one another. Mother Mary continued to be Jesus' teacher, helped him, rise in his knowledge. And she had a big role in his resurrection at the crucifixion as well. So these are things that, lo and behold, as I was looking in the apocryphal Gospels, the ones that, again, are not considered formal and official in the canon.
That didn't make it into the Bible.
Yeah, didn't make it into the Bible. Things like Life of Mary, History of the Blessed Virgin, Gospel of Bartholomew, these other Gospels. And so
Gospel
forth.
of Thomas.
Yeah, right. You come to find out that a lot of verification for what Sri Kaleshwar said is in those Gospels. And I point out every single instance of it in The Secret Life of Mother Mary. So people can go and find that. It is amazing what the overlap is. And I am pretty sure Sri Kaleshwar was not reading those sources. He was just getting his direct knowing. He was looking at these palm leaf manuscripts. He was seeing evidence in India that these people had traveled there, at some point in their lives and so forth. So that's just a little tidbit of what's in the book, and people can find out the details and, really just have your mind blown about the actual reality of these people and what this means for our lives today, how their practices can be our practices, because Kaleshwar brought a lot of them through these mantras and sacred drawings, and I've been authorized to teach them. There are others who've been authorized. So it becomes very real, Emmy, when we understand, this is a living and active body of information, practices and teachings that we can access now. It's extremely exciting.
There may be some folks who are listening thinking, well, yoga isn't sanctioned by the Christian or Catholic Church or whatever, quote, my religion is. And I've even heard of there's Christian yoga centers popping up. So could you share a little bit about how you came to the conclusion that Mother Mary was practicing yoga?
Right. And by yoga, again, we're not talking about stretching, downward dog, snake pose, whatever. By yoga, we're talking about the practice of using mantras with intention, the practice of using sacred drawings that are very complex and that are attached to deep philosophical, energetic conceptions of the universe. Practices that had to do with using your womb power, your womb energy intentionally to heal others, that kind of thing. Those are what I'm talking about with yogas. So yes, those kinds of yogas are more in the Eastern traditions, and especially the Hindu traditions. So it's a matter of, if people are open to considering that, exploring or even looking at these practices, finding out if there's anything relevant for them. And this medicine may not be for everyone. I'm not trying to be here converting Christians and Catholics to my ideas. This medicine is for people who read this and go, I knew it. I knew there was something else. Or, yes, that verifies what I've been getting directly. Or, yes, that verifies what I've been reading about. I'm so excited and interested in that. Give me more. That's what this work is for. It's not coming to create strife, more argumentation, divisions about philosophy and beliefs and what's real and what isn't real. No, this is for people who want to go now into this stream that I'm just gathering for everyone and from various sources, want to take a look because they think there's something there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of why I wanted to have you on as a guest is to help heal some of those, or many, divisions, because I think that, didn't Christ say, I am the way? And many people have interpreted that as Christ is the only way.
That's right. Because how I read that is, I am one very good way if you're interested. Okay. But the way it comes out is dogmatic. It gets anchored down. He's the only one. And this version of him is the only one. And all the churches argue about what that version is. And then
what color was his skin, for example?
Right, yes, exactly. Another thing, they codify everything in text. You have to go just by that. You have to listen to the exact clerical authorities that are in line with that. You can't experience God directly. You have to go through the church, and, it goes on. And eventually the so-called spirituality becomes its complete opposite. Before you know it, we're burning witches. We're killing, people in crusades. We're slaughtering Cathars. We're enslaving people over here and there and trying to convert them to religions, all in the name of Jesus, which is a subversion and inversion of what the original esoteric mystical teachings were all about. If you go to the original sources, which is what I and others do.
Yeah. Some suggest that Jesus actually went to India and did learn yoga, perhaps even Buddhism. Do you have any understanding of that?
Yes. My main understanding is through what, again, Sri Kaleshwar says about that. He says, yes, absolutely, Jesus went to India. And actually, Sri Kaleshwar holds that after he was resurrected by Mother Mary and him working in tandem, their esoteric yogas to restore his body, he went literally to India, that he did not ascend out of the earth plane at that moment. Whether you believe that or not, it's okay. Whether you feel like, no, Jesus left his body then and he's been operating as a divine figure, that's fine. Whether you feel that he first went to India, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. What we're talking about is accessing this man, this being's powers that he would say in the Gnostic sources are everything that you have and more. Okay, so that's what this is about. And Mother Mary had those same powers. Mary Magdalene cultivated those powers. We can cultivate those powers. And yes, Jesus' time in India, whether it was after the resurrection or before, because there are books that have to do with, hey, the unknown period from the time that he was, an adolescent through 33, he went to India then, one way or another, there is apparently evidence in India in certain areas written in stone, literally attesting to his presence there. And Kaleshwar says, he would have gone there to learn from great sages who were there, men who knew the secret esoteric ways, these ancient yogas, things that Jesus needed to do to bulk himself up spiritually and with his powers so that he could do what he was wanting to do for the human populace, which is, raise us back to our angelic level, to our angelic abilities, and come out of this downtroddenness that everybody was suffering under during the Roman Empire and beyond.
A definition of yoga is union with the divine.
That's right. So all of these practices were ultimately directing the practitioner to have the experience of weaving with the divine or union with the divine, or more likely opening to the divinity that is already within, you see.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel these great beings are all about.
Where do the Essenes come into the connection with Mother Mary and Jesus and other spiritual figures around this time?
Well, numbers of scholars and others feel that Jesus and Mary were part of the Essene lines. Now, I find evidence that Mary's mother, Anne, was a therapeutai, one of the branches of the Essenes. by virtue of how she creates her own sanctuary in her room, her altar, how she does various practices like singing and so forth, how she raises Mother Mary with a special diet. So I correlate all of that in the mystery tradition of miraculous conception with what I read about in Josephus and other writers about the Therapeutae as being part of the Essene orders. So there are some fine books, and there's some fine scholarship about this that really places them within that organization. And I'm going to be continuing to explore that myself.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about who the Essenes were? What made them unique?
All right. There's an ancient text that describes how they are, how they lived. They had, again, a special purified diet. They were mainly eating hyssop and water, maybe with a little bit of honey. They wore robes. There were men and women that were part of these orders, and they were focused all day on maintaining a high vibrational connection with the divine realms through prayer, through singing, through coming together and congregating, and so forth. There were sects of it that were celibate. There were some that were not. But these are kind of the basics of these people dwelling, in the desert in the Middle East at the time.
Many say that Jesus was a Jew.
Right. It seems that he does come from lineages that we would identify as Jewish. Some would say, well, he's not technically Jewish. He's Levite or whatever it is. I don't get into that level of analysis. But Mother Mary, Elizabeth, Jesus, Anne, they all seem to be related to these peoples that we would broadly call Jewish, right? And so, yeah, that's the history and the culture out of which they are emerging. And of course, the Jewish people, they have an earlier than Abraham kind of existence, because when you look at Abraham, it's kind of like, wait a minute, he was coming out of the Canaanite culture and they were goddess worshiping. And we even see evidence in the Hebrew Bible today in Kings and so forth, that they were venerating Asherahs, the feminine divinity. And, King Josias, I think, was trying to eradicate this. So we see evidence of it by virtue of the descriptions that it was being identified as being sinful and had to be eradicated and, all this kind of stuff. But if you look at these texts, if you look at the archaeological images and, all that kind of thing, early Judaism, goddess venerating. Coming out of the Canaanite tradition, which was goddess venerating. Yes, they had sacred male figures, but they had that sacred feminine that we started talking about at the beginning of this conversation, writ large.
And the feminine is also related to creation.
Absolutely. Because these goddesses are considered creator mothers. And flowing down into the Jewish and even the Christian tradition, we have the figure of Sophia, plentifully apparent all the way, into the Song of Songs and so forth. And this was a representation of this great mother goddess in Hebrew garb and then Christian garb, essentially. And I feel and I discern that Sophia is the wind under the wings of Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. They are manifestations of this great goddess. And I talk about that extensively in my two books, The Secret Life of Mother Mary and The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception.
You also mention a connection to Isis.
Yes. Well, on the esoteric level, first of all, Isis was a goddess who was venerated extensively before and during the Roman Empire when the Marys and when Jesus and the Sacred Family were alive in Egypt and beyond, all up into, the European continent and so forth. Now, others have connected Mary Magdalene as being an Isis priestess. And real esoteric scholars like Rudolf Steiner, the great seer from Germany, he says flat out, Isis was the previous incarnation to Mother Mary. So anybody who's into reincarnation and the esoterics of all that understands, and what I've said, that Mother Mary had many, many lives perfecting her soul. Her penultimate life was as Isis, potentially, according to this, which makes sense to me. And Isis was working with various divine conception technologies, which I talk about. So by the time that she reincarnates as Mother Mary, the reproduction technology that Mother Mary is working with and is trained in is called parthenogenesis, which is self-conception. No male actor is involved at all, neither a human male, nor a religious male, nor an astral entity on the other side of the veil.
I know you have a whole book on that, Marguerite, and maybe we can have another conversation about the divine births of antiquity. Could you just shed a little light on why? Well, you mentioned earlier that this is to help bring, as you said, an avatar forward to help people on the planet Earth. Can you share, maybe give us a little insight into how that divine conception occurs?
Yes. And these details can be found in the mystery tradition of miraculous conception, but I'll just give a little taste. All right. A couple of little ideas. Don't do this at home alone. All right. These women were working at high, we might say, quantum physics levels with light, because various descriptions in the ancient world, various even paintings, intuited by the painters of the Renaissance, for example, show Mother Mary and others conceiving through a flash of light. This is telling us that these women are working with light coming into their eggs, what have you. They're also working with a process called weaving. And this is what Mother Mary is described as doing when she is conceiving Jesus in that infancy gospel of James / birth of Mary that I analyze in detail in The Secret Life of Mother Mary. She's weaving. But what I'm coming to understand is that this role, which was given to the temple weavers, they were called temple weavers, Mother Mary was one, was not just about putting thread together to create fabrics, hangings, and the Holy of Holies veil. This was a deeper yoga, a deeper bringing together of light, matter, spirit into flesh, that kind of thing, working with angelic forces. That's why we have the pronouncement by the angel Gabriel, this interdimensional being. Yes, you have conceived. You can stop now. Okay. Because she was working with these beings. And there are many other things that I talk about that she does that people can look at for themselves and just become fascinated by it.
You yourself have received personal healing from Mother Mary in a miraculous fashion, according to the stories you share in your book. Could you let us know at least one of those stories? What happened to you?
Well, I have a health miracle that has to do with my womb. You'll have to go to the book for that.
You don't want to share that? Okay.
I want to give a teaser.
Okay.
But I will give another one, slightly more pedestrian, which is the synchronicity of how I was able to find and buy my first house.
Mm.
This was shortly after I had completed the Holy Womb Chakra practices. A week later, I didn't realize this until afterward, but a week later, in one of the worst buying environments during, the big epidemic that we went through back in 2020, I was able to get through a little wormhole and find this house, kind of by coincidence. And then when I entered the house, the woman had the exact same prayer card on an altar that she had created to Jesus and Mary. The exact same prayer card that I would carry around. It was my personal prayer card, as like if I had to bring one sacred thing with me during my travels, and I was doing a lot of travels at that time, it was that prayer card. And you know how synchronicity works? Like you try to explain it to other people and it's like, yeah, well, okay. But when it happens, you're like, boom. And it was like that. When I saw that prayer card, I was like, oh my gosh, Mother Mary wants me to live in this house. And then, of course, the seller's name was Mary. You know what I mean? Like it's these kinds of signs and synchronicities that there's someone who's got your back, and in my case, it's Mother Mary. And there are other things I talk about in the book that are much more serious, that have, positive outcomes, I believe, through Mother Mary, the Holy Womb Chakra practices, and more. And I talk also about my personal story, how I was first rejecting Mother Mary as an early, young kid, and how I then kind of came into the research about divine birth. And then I realized, oh my gosh, there's much more here than meets the eye. And then started realizing this is more than even just a religious or academic exercise. Whoa, who is this Mother Mary? And who can she be to me and everyone else? And that's when I started developing the actual relationship with this being, you see, because these beings are available for relationships in the now, for our personal problems, for our healing, as well as for our awakening, our great having the veils lifted off our eyes about what is reality, what are the dimensions, what is really going on planet Earth.
You mentioned in your book how you were given the name Mary when was it your confirmation and you rejected it?
Yeah.
And then later you now use that name in your name. And you also share in your book, and I'm wondering if you could enlighten us about the meaning of the name Mary.
Exactly. It's a priestess title. Okay. And I'll go into that in a minute. But just for me personally, this is how this healing works. I won't name who it is who basically strong-armed me into having the name Mary as a confirmation name when I really wanted Juliet. But this person was basically, to use the phrase, the thorn in the side of Marguerite. Okay? But she ended up being the one, like this worst person in my life, ended up being the one who conferred this name on me, if you get the meaning there. So this, in my, my now life, I'm only realizing the significance that that's the doorway of how I'm going to be able to forgive this person for what they did in my life. Okay? And that's to come, and I really have not shared that before in any talks or anything. And it's very fresh because I've just recently had a very dramatic, experience, with the Marys in a ceremonial context recently. So, that has really opened me to all sorts of insights and connectivity with them on an even deeper level. But in short, the name Mary goes all the way back to Maria, then Miriam, which goes back to the Egyptian Mary, which was a term that meant divine love. It meant the one who is loved, the one who loves, and the one who is love. Okay? And so that title is a priestess moniker. And it's why we have so many Marys in the Bible and the New Testament, because they had the name conferred upon them when they would achieve certain initiations to help others, to help our world. Okay. So there is a whole ancient priestesshood of Marys that goes back even before them. It's like a timeless lineage. So this is why I have the Mary and Magdalene priestess training, so that we can scoop back up this energy for ourselves of what it is to be a Mary and a Magdalene. That's another priestess title. Won't go into that right now. And weave this together for ourselves again and make this priestesshood come alive again for our purposes today. This is a non-denominational, priestesshood and training. And, I know you have information under this video that people can look at to find out more at the Seven Sisters Mystery School website.
What is your vision? What do you hope to happen with divine feminine power on planet Earth in relationship to and respect for, of course, masculine divine power and the oneness of which we are all a part?
What I'm wanting and what I'm dedicating my life toward is the healing of all people, the release of our suffering, the betterment of our planet, the restoration of living in joy, the harmonious relating of men and women and all people, the harmonious relating of people with the natural world, the animals, our nature, and so forth. That's what this is all about. And I believe these beings are here to help us if we want. They are one grouping that's available if they seem interesting and compelling to you. Give them a hi, say hi, start talking to them, ask them, can you help me? Ask them, what can I do for you in our world? That kind of thing. That's what this is about. It's not about religion, worship, getting into restrictive dogma, nothing. No, this is about liberation.
Mm-hmm. When you talk of Mother Mary, I also think from another cultural perspective of Kwan Yin.
Yes.
The Buddha of compassion, right?
You see, Mother Mary is the same as Kwan Yin. It's all the same. You see, she has different looks and outfits depending on the culture. Because everyone needs to see the divine as themselves so that they can see the divine in themselves.
What role does intuition play in divine feminine power?
A huge role. It is the ability and the roadway to access everything you need to know, everything you need to learn, everything you need to grasp, everything you need to do. And that is also what the Marys and Jesus were all about, was opening up the intuition. If you really look at their original documents,
the kingdom of heaven is inside.
That is the key teaching. Okay. And learning about what that really means and then how to really unlock it is the key. And that's why I think this new vision of Mother Mary is very important. Trainings like the priestess training I'm doing are important. And there are many others who are doing Magdalene trainings, and we're all getting at the same thing. But now's the time.
Marguerite, is there anything else you want to share today, knowing that this is a very deep and rich topic about divine feminine power?
I hope I've stimulated excitement in people, men and women, to look further. Be it my books, be it related books, be it going out in nature and saying hi to Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene and Jesus, whatever it is, in your own way, or be it going and saying hello to Kwan Yin, Shiva, deities that are, known in other continents, right? Access the source, the doorway that speaks most to you. Go through that doorway and, start allowing yourself to do the healing, and then start allowing yourself to do the work in the world of the great healing of our planet.
Yeah. Very much needed today. Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso, thank you so much for your time today and for all that you've shared with us. And I do look forward to another conversation with you on New Thinking Aloud, hopefully in the near future as well.
Oh, well, you're welcome. It's been great being here. I've loved this conversation, Emmy, and thank you so much for allowing me to share this with your beautiful community.
Our pleasure. And for those of you watching or listening, thank you for being with us, because you are the reason that we are here. Book 3 in the new Thinking Aloud dialogue series is UFOs and UAP, Are We Really Alone? Now available on Amazon.
You can now download a PDF copy or order a beautiful printed copy of Issue 6 of the new Thinking Aloud magazine.